The oxygen counter on my suit reads 11 minutes, and I am still 40 kilometers from the nearest airlock. My name is Jesse Corvain, and I was not born to die alone in the dark between two dead engines. My ship, the Hollow Wing, has lost all power. My people, the Aeltir, have no home left to return to. The Council took our world 3 cycles ago, and I have been running ever since, from station to station, always told the same thing. There is no room for you here. Move along. Find somewhere else. Now my suit is failing, my ship is dead, and the only signal on my scanner is a small, unlisted colony that does not appear on any Council chart. It should not exist, and yet there it is, glowing faint and steady against the black, like someone left a light on just in case a stranger came knocking. I have 11 minutes of air and no other option, so I point my emergency thrusters toward that light, and I pray to gods I stopped believing in. The Council once told my people that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with a seat at their table. I remember the broadcast. I was young then, still hopeful, still certain the galaxy was fair. The human delegate stood before 17 species and asked for nothing more than a place among them. He did not ask for weapons or territory. He asked for a chance to be judged by what his people could become, not by what frightened the old empires. The vote took 4 minutes. Rejected, they said. Too young, too unstable, too unpredictable to be allowed near the wider galaxy. I watched the human delegate's face on the broadcast. He did not shout. He did not argue. He simply nodded, thanked the Council for their time, and walked away. I remember thinking, at the time, that he looked like a man who had already decided something the rest of us were not yet allowed to know. That was 9 years ago. I have not thought about humans since, not until my suit alarm screams at me and this strange, unlisted colony becomes the only thing standing between me and the cold. My thrusters give out with 3 kilometers left. I drift, spinning slowly, watching the light grow larger and colder at the same time as my air thins. I try the comms, though I expect nothing. Static answers me at first, and then, impossibly, a voice. Unidentified craft, this is Meridian Watch. We have your signal. Hold tight, we are coming to you. The voice belongs to a woman. She sounds calm, unbothered, as though pulling strangers out of the void is simply a Tuesday for her. I want to answer, but my throat has gone dry with the thinning air, and the darkness at the edges of my vision is spreading like ink in water. The last thing I remember is a bright shape crossing in front of the stars, and then nothing at all. I wake to warmth, which is the first surprise, because warmth is not something the void gives freely. The second surprise is the ceiling above me, painted a soft green, with a single window showing a horizon I do not recognize. Trees, actual trees, growing under an open sky, on a world that should not exist according to every chart I have ever studied. A young man sits in a chair beside the bed, reading something on a thin screen. He notices I am awake and sets it down without any urgency, as if he has been waiting exactly this long and not a second more. You gave us a good scare, he says. 11 minutes of air left when we pulled you in, cutting it close, even for a Council chart pilot. I do not know how to answer him, so I ask the only question that matters. Where am I? He smiles, and it is not the polite, careful smile the Council delegates wear when speaking to lesser species. It is simple and unguarded. You're on Halden's Reach, he says. Population 11,000 and rising. We're not on any registry you'd recognize. That's rather the point. His name is Callum, and he tells me, without being asked, that he grew up on Earth but left as a teenager, when the first ships went out looking for a place the Council could not touch. I ask him what that means, and he shrugs like it is the most ordinary thing in the world. After the vote, he says, we stopped waiting for permission. I spend the next several days recovering in the small clinic, and every day someone different comes to check on me. A woman named Priya brings food and asks nothing about where I came from, only whether the meal suits me. An older man named Desmond fixes the damaged panel on my suit without being asked, simply because he noticed it was torn. None of them ask about my species status, my registration number, or which quadrant claims jurisdiction over my kind. They simply treat me as a person who needed help and received it. It unsettles me more than it should. I have spent 9 years being told, in 100 different ways, that I am a burden, a problem to be processed and moved along. Here I am neither. Here I am simply Jesse, recovering from a bad flight. When I am strong enough to walk, Callum offers to show me the colony, and I accept, mostly because I am curious, and partly because I have nowhere else to be. Halden's Reach is not what I expected. I expected desperation, the kind of makeshift survival I have seen on abandoned mining stations, where the walls are patched with whatever scrap can be found, and the air always smells faintly of rust. Instead, I find streets lined with young trees, buildings built from a strange composite that glows faintly gold at dusk, And laughter, actual laughter, coming from an open market square where 3 different species haggle over fruit that should not grow this far from a stable star. I ask Callum how any of this is possible. A colony this size, built without council approval, without council shipping lanes, without council resources. He laughs, though not unkindly. We didn't build it with council resources, he says. We built it with what we had left after they said no. Turns out that was more than they expected. He tells me the story slowly, over the following days, piece by piece, the way one might describe a long and difficult journey to someone who only asked out of politeness but ended up needing to hear the whole thing. After the rejection, he says, humanity did not send another delegation. There was no protest, no formal complaint. Instead, ships began leaving Earth's system quietly, one after another, filled with engineers, farmers, doctors, and anyone willing to build something rather than beg for a seat that was never going to be offered honestly. They searched for systems the council had marked as worthless, dead stars, barren rocks, places too far from any trade route to be worth claiming, and there, using technology built from stubbornness as much as science, they began to build. It was not easy, Callum tells me, and his voice loses some of its lightness. We lost ships, we lost people. The first 2 colonies failed entirely, swallowed by storms we didn't understand yet, but we kept going, because going back meant admitting they were right about us. I ask him what changed, why this place, why now, why it succeeded when the others did not. He looks at me for a long moment before answering. We stopped trying to prove we deserved a seat at their table, he says. We started building our own. The colony grew slowly at first, a few hundred settlers scattered across 3 connected outposts. But word travels strangely in the dark between stars, carried by smugglers, refugees, and the kind of people the council prefers not to acknowledge exist. Word reached other rejected species, other refugees like me, people whose homes had been taken, or whose petitions had been denied, by the same 17 species who once told humanity it was too dangerous to matter. They started arriving, Callum says. Not all at once. A ship here, a family there. We never turned anyone away. Didn't matter what they looked like or where they came from. If they were willing to work and willing to live peacefully, there was room. I think of the L tier, scattered now across a dozen unwelcoming stations, tolerated but never accepted, always reminded that we are guests in someone else's galaxy. I think of my own bitterness toward humans, inherited from broadcasts and rumors I never questioned, and I feel something uncomfortable settle in my chest. Shame, perhaps, or something close to it. That evening I meet the person who leads the colony, though leads is not quite the right word, since Callum tells me there is no single ruler here, only a rotating council of volunteers chosen by the people. Her name is Marion, and she is older than most of the settlers I have met, with silver hair and eyes that seem to measure everything carefully before speaking. She finds me sitting alone near the edge of the market square, watching the strange golden light settle over the rooftops as the local sun dips low. "You're the one from the Hollow Wing," she says, sitting beside me without asking permission, though somehow it does not feel intrusive. I tell her yes, and she nods slowly, as though confirming something she already suspected. "I read your ship's registry when the recovery team pulled it in," she says. "IL tier markings. I'm sorry about your homeworld. We heard what happened." I ask her, carefully, why humans would care about a species most of the galaxy has already forgotten. She looks at me with something like patience, the kind reserved for a question asked many times before. "Because we know what it feels like to be told we don't matter," she says. "We built this place so no one else would have to feel that again if we could help it." I ask her the question that has been sitting in my chest since I woke in that clinic bed. Why did the council reject you, truly? What made them so afraid? Marion considers this for a long moment, watching the sky rather than me. "I think," she says finally, "they were not afraid of what we were. I think they were afraid of what we might become, if given the chance. A species without a single government, without a single culture, without a single language, and yet somehow still capable of building something like this in less than a decade. That kind of unpredictability terrifies people who have spent centuries building careful, rigid systems of control." I ask her if she resents them for it. She smiles, though it does not quite reach her eyes. "Resentment takes energy I'd rather spend building something," she says. "Besides, their rejection gave us something they never intended. Freedom to build exactly what we wanted, without anyone else's rules attached." Over the following weeks, as my strength returns fully, I find myself unable to leave. Not because my ship remains unfixed, though it does, but because I do not want to. I spend my mornings helping in the communal gardens, learning the names of plants that should not grow on a world this far from a stable star. yet somehow flourish here regardless. I spend my afternoons in the market square, listening to at least 6 languages blend together in easy, unbothered conversation. I spend my evenings with Callum, Priya, Desmond, and others, hearing more of the colony's strange, stubborn history. They tell me about the storms that nearly destroyed the first outpost, and how a young engineer named Nathaniel redesigned the shelter systems using nothing but salvaged parts and pure determination, saving 400 lives in a single night. They tell me about a woman named Charlotte who negotiated peace between 2 feuding refugee groups, not through council mediation, but through nothing more than patience and shared meals over many long weeks. They tell me about children born on this world who have never once heard the word council spoken with anything but mild, distant curiosity, as though it belongs to a history lesson rather than a living threat. Every story is different, yet every story carries the same quiet thread beneath it. When the galaxy refused to make room for them, they simply made room for themselves, and then, without hesitation, made room for everyone else the galaxy had also refused. One evening, nearly a month after my arrival, a ship enters the system that is not one of the colony's own vessels. Its markings are unmistakable, sleek and silver, bearing the seal of the Galactic Council. The colony's alert system hums quietly, not with alarm, but with simple awareness, the way one might note an approaching storm, rather than a disaster. I find Callum near the landing platform, watching the ship descend with an expression I cannot quite read. "They finally noticed us," he says, though there is no fear in his voice, only something closer to weary anticipation. The delegation that steps off the ship is small, only 3 representatives, dressed in the pale ceremonial robes the council favors for diplomatic visits. Their leader, a tall, thin being with pale blue skin and unreadable eyes, introduces himself as Ambassador Tevrick, speaking in the careful, measured tones the council trains into all its representatives. "We have become aware," he says, addressing Marion and the small gathering of settlers who have assembled to meet them, "of an unregistered population growth in this sector, in direct violation of council settlement protocols." Marion listens without any visible tension, her hands folded calmly in front of her. "This world was never claimed by the council," she says. "It was marked as uninhabitable in your own surveys. We simply proved that assessment wrong." The ambassador's expression does not change, though something in his posture stiffens slightly. "Regardless of prior classification," he says, "any settlement of this scale falls under council jurisdiction. You are required to register this colony, submit to inspection, and accept council oversight of your continued development." I watch the settlers around me, waiting for anger, for fear, for the kind of desperate pleading I have seen countless times from my own people when facing council authority. Instead, I see something entirely different. I see calm. I see settlers exchanging quiet, almost amused glances, as though the ambassador has said something faintly absurd. Marion speaks again, her voice steady and unhurried. "With respect, Ambassador, this colony was built entirely without council resources, council funding, or council protection. We did not ask for your recognition when we built it, and we do not require it now. If you wish to establish diplomatic relations, we would welcome that conversation, as equals. But we will not accept oversight from a body that made it very clear, 9 years ago, that it wanted nothing to do with us." The ambassador seems, for the first time, uncertain how to respond. He glances at the crowd, perhaps expecting to find weakness, some fracture he can exploit. Instead, he finds only quiet, unified resolve, human settlers standing shoulder to shoulder with refugees from a dozen rejected species, myself among them, all watching him with the same steady patience. "You understand," he says finally, "that the council could classify this settlement as an unauthorized threat, and respond accordingly." Callum steps forward then, and though his voice remains calm, there is something firm beneath it that makes even the ambassador pause. "With what forces exactly?" he asks. "You've spent the last 9 years assuming we would fail without your permission. We didn't. And in that time, we've welcomed nearly every species your council has ever turned away. If you're looking for a fight, Ambassador, you'll find it costs more than it's worth. If you're looking for a partner, we're happy to talk. The choice is entirely yours." The silence that follows stretches long enough that I find myself holding my breath, uncertain which way it will break. Then, slowly, the ambassador inclines his head, a gesture that is not quite respect, but is no longer arrogance either. "I will relay your position to the council," he says. He does not leave with threats. He does not leave with demands. He leaves, instead, with the quiet, uncomfortable understanding that the galaxy he thought he understood has already changed, without asking his permission to do so. After the council ship departs, the settlers do not celebrate wildly, as I expected. Instead, they simply return to their work, to their gardens, their markets, their quiet evening conversations, as though the visit was little more than a passing inconvenience. It strikes me, watching them, that this is perhaps the truest measure of their strength. They do not need to prove anything to anyone anymore. They already know what they built, and no ambassador's disapproval can take that from them. That night, I sit with Marion near the edge of the settlement, watching the strange twin moons rise slowly over the horizon. Will they come back? I ask her. Probably, she says, but it won't matter. We're not the same people who asked for their approval 9 years ago. We stopped needing it a long time back. I ask her, quietly, if there is room here for one more, for someone whose homeworld is gone, and whose people have nowhere left to belong. She looks at me, and for the first time since I met her, her expression softens completely, losing every trace of careful measurement. There's always room, she says. That was rather the entire point of building this place. I think, in that moment, of the council broadcast from 9 years ago, of the human delegate walking away without argument, already carrying some quiet certainty the rest of the galaxy could not yet see. I think of my own bitterness, inherited and unquestioned, toward a species I never truly understood. I think of the 11 minutes of air that brought me here, and the light on the edge of the void that turned out to be exactly what it looked like, a place built by people who refused to disappear simply because they were told they did not belong. The galaxy rejected humanity, certain that rejection would be the end of their story. Instead, it became the beginning of something far larger, something built not out of anger or revenge, but out of quiet, stubborn hope, extended freely to anyone willing to build alongside them. I stay on Halden's Reach after that night, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because, for the first time since my homeworld was taken, I have finally found somewhere I choose to stay. And when new ships arrive, carrying more refugees the wider galaxy has forgotten, I am there to greet them, the way Callum once greeted me, without questions about where they came from, only the quiet, simple offer of a place to belong. The stars above Halden's Reach were never given to humanity by any council vote. They were claimed by hands that refused to stop building, long after the galaxy told them to give up. And now, beneath that same sky, refugees from a dozen forgotten worlds sleep safely for the first time in years, in a home the galaxy said could never exist. They were wrong, and every morning, when the twin moons fade and the golden light rises again over Halden's Reach, the whole colony rises with it, proof enough that being rejected by the stars was never the end of humanity's story. It was only ever the beginning.